Alex Answer here, coming to you December 5th, 2015, from northern New Mexico. The title of this video is What You Need to Know About the Portland Flooding. And we're not going to talk about the facts of the flooding. What we're going to do is talk to you about Portland. Now, I was born at Good Samaritan Hospital in Portland, Oregon on February 25th, 1980. And I hosted a television program on community access television for 10 years. It was called Outside the Box TV, and there are past episodes of OTB TV on my YouTube channel, which you can watch for yourself. I recommend, if you're a first-time viewer, and if you are a Portlander, or if you are someone that is considering moving to Portland, that you visit my YouTube channel and that you find the Real Portlandia playlist series. One video in particular would be the Real Portlandia episode, where I talk about what Portland is really like, a little bit about its history, as opposed to the fake version of Portland. So what you need to know about the Portland flooding is that this is occurring in a city that, despite the popular belief that it's a progressive place, there's actually a lot of suffering and negative energy in Portland. Portland has a history of human trafficking. And this goes back to the foundation of Portland when they were first deciding what to name Portland. The first women to reside in Portland were prostitutes. And so it was literally created as a Dante's Inferno scenario as they cleared the forest. Within 10 years of Lewis and Clark, or was it 1 year? It was within several years of Lewis and Clark, which are known as, gods on earth to the people of the Pacific Northwest. As soon as they arrived, the Native Americans were dead. 90% dead from smallpox. So in addition to that, the first industries in Portland was prostitution and crimping, as opposed to pimping. And crimping is where you basically are involved in the human trafficking business of male sailors. Many men that found their way to Portland during the early days ended up in the Shanghai trade. And many years later, even after the crimping business, the Shanghai trade was banned and shut down, Portland, before its progressive status, had quite a bit of crime, gambling, organized crime group activity. There was a huge crack epidemic in the mid-'80s when, at that time, Californians from South Central, Bloods and Crips, came up to Portland and imported, brought in, or we can also say exported, a lot of that energy from Los Angeles. And we fast forward to today. I'm leaving a lot out, but you have a lot of people from California and New York that have displaced locals, unable to pay the premium increase for rent. Now, we're also talking about young people that, have never had property passed down to them, that have always been renters, as well as the elderly, people that have owned their home for many years, but they're not able to afford the increase in taxes because property values have exploded in Oregon. This has led to elderly that are on a disabled or a limited income, Social Security, retirement, pension fund, etc., or having little to no income, especially for those that are not on welfare. So how are you, if you're a Portland native, able to stay in your place of residence if you cannot afford the increase in property taxes? So there's a ricochet effect, and there's an energy of heartlessness that has been increasing in Portland. I would say especially in the last 5 years. I left Portland and I went off grid in Colorado and I moved back to Portland. So I had the experience of leaving in 2011 and coming back in 2014. And seeing how consciousness changed within Portland. And I went back on Access TV and I talked about the homeless issue, local corruption, City Hall, Mayor Charlie Hales, the street tax, human trafficking, and the fact that Portland's number 3. And I feel like I just made Portlanders angry for bringing up, the fact that we have a child sex problem, not only in America, but in particular in that city. And so my coverage of real Portland corruption really just pissed people off, and it alienated me even more. And when I was doing my show in 07, 08, 09 and covering global conspiracies and the larger picture, The message was much more received, but also in recent years, people have become much more numb, and there's an oversaturation of disinformation in the alternative or independent media in this particular day and age. I'm also not a Democrat, so I also alienated myself from many Obama supporters and self-described leftists or socialists or Democrats. Being a non-Democrat and a non-Republican, I stood out like a sore thumb. And I also noticed how Portland became, I won't use the word racist, but very tribalist. Lots of Scottish, lots of Irish in people's background, nothing wrong with that. But I literally saw a specific bloodline of European come in like the ninth gates of hell, like an invasion of a bloodline, and minorities and other non-whites being pushed out of the city limits to places like Gresham. And I'm a Portland-born native, and I came to find out that means nothing to the new Portlanders moving in that are from places where things are far more harsh. And so I noticed, as we wrap up here, a real lack of human empathy, love, compassion. I saw a lot of gender warfare, a lot of tribalism, a lot of greed, a lot of blind support of the military and the current president, and a real lack of awareness as to, what's going on with the big picture with world events. And because those are the things that I'm interested in, to the average Portlander, they were just not fun conversations. There's a lot of reasons why Portland wasn't for me, even though geographically it, for years, has been a pretty decent place to visit and live in. But the current Portland is becoming something more akin to a future New York of the West Coast, with all the problems and trimmings that you might expect from a major U.S. city. And so you're seeing major flooding in Portland. And as I mentioned in the last video, part of the issue is a lot of money that has been pocketed over many years by the city of Portland and contractors that never fixed the city's sewer problem, but instead pocketed the money or perhaps diverted that money to other places. So this is like one example of many examples of cause and effect. We have a corrupt government where they launder money, but there's so much money they're taking in from the taxpayers, people just don't notice it right away until there's a situation where you really need the sewers to divert that water. Because the sewer program is all fucked and the people never held the city of Portland accountable and never really had legitimate representation of government. Instead, you have people that are in line with the real estate mafia, people like Charlie Hales, that will sell out the people of Portland in order to make a buck and receive millions of dollars. And of course, those of you that are watching are intelligent enough and educated enough to know that China owns a building in the South Waterfront District. Of course, you already know that, right? You're not apathetic. You're smart and stuff. So Portland long ago sold out to private security like G4S Security. They invest in companies like HSBC, which has already been caught and fined for laundering money to the drug cartels. And you have a child sex trafficking epidemic, and you have a generation of nihilists, young folks that have moved into Portland that really don't care about real Portlanders. And you have a lot of gold digging going on as well, things I won't get into in this video, but everything that you can conceive of relating to Satanism in American society, not devil worship, but just run over people, do as thou wilt, and basic nihilist concepts and theologies. Kill them all theologies. Just drink now and pay later. Just party, party, party. Just worship yourself. Tell the people you're a god or a goddess. Use your brain, your brawn, or your beauty to absorb and vampire on other people's energy. I mean, Portland is a test subject case. There's a reason why Portland is opening up their arms to Google, for example, and other multinational corporations. It's a hub. It's a social engineering center. It's a grooming center. It is not the type of place that people think it is. It is a popular place to move, but that's for a reason. That is for a very specific reason. That's not an accident. It's not an accident at all, in any way, shape, or form. But what you're seeing now is how unprogressive it is to live in a dense population center, to have a non-existent real sewer program, to where when you have a little bit of rain or a lot of rain, all the human fecal matter literally rises to the surface. And you got to literally like get in a canoe to get around certain areas. Some people might think that this is sad what's taking place, but if you pay attention and you are aware of the Portland landscape, you'll notice areas where it's high prime real estate, owned by real estate billionaires. Those are some of the properties that are affected. Sure, there's houses and trailer parks in Gresham where the poor are affected, but there's also other areas that are affected where they're still building. You know, they're still building upon this sinking Babylon. And it leads me to wonder, how far away are we until we see like major crustal displacement, maybe, you know, some other earth-shaking events where, you know, the area around Portland and west of that actually breaks off. And I've always felt, as well as others that have since left Portland, that have similar views as I, that it's a Babylon of sorts that's drawn a lot of negative energy. A lot of good people have actually long left Portland. And Portland is still riding off of the high of its former legacy and now is more of a hive mind of selfish narcissists, for the most part, at least 90% of the population, with a very small segment of it that appears to be connected still to its heart. Portland has, and historically has had, even before cell phone towers, has had a high concentration of mentally ill people. And Hawthorne Boulevard used to be called Asylum Avenue because it used to house the state hospital. There's a reason why Portland has the bumper sticker, "Keep Portland Weird." It's the history of mental illness in Portland, for whatever reason, combined with the history of kidnapping, alcoholism, drug addiction, and slavery, and callous behavior like kicking people out of their homes and creating environments that lead to homelessness and non-affordable housing. Also, circumstances that lead women towards prostitution and bring in the principles of prostitution into their regular everyday relationships. And it also impacts the world of men. Again, this micro little city, Portlandia, that a lot of people know nothing about, with a homeless population booming, a sex trafficking problem booming. Other than Vegas, it has more strip clubs where women dance for money, where they're sex objects. They're not liberated. That's not real feminism. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, hardcore pornography is feminism. We're really like living out this weird collapse of a Roman Empire. And literally, when the headline is "human shit rises to the surface," or human shit throughout the streets, that's like a metaphor for what's really happening, ironically, in a city, a hotbed of narcissists, of Portlanders, many of them that think that their shit doesn't stink, that they're super progressive, that they're Portlander, that they're a Portlander, an arbitrary thing. But in reality, their shit does stink. They really are cruel people there that really will let good people die in the streets. It really is a major city with very few conspiracy researchers broadcasting out of there. The few that do have already been turned over to the dark side, in my opinion. Clyde Lewis, Ground Zero Radio. I mean, you've got to be a damn fool to not realize that Clyde is heavily infected by dark ET energy. Portland is a hotbed of negative energy, archon energy, demonic energy, rape energy, alcoholism. And so this is the ultimate case of law of attraction. Babylon is sinking. Portland is a sick city. And the people inside Portland, nearly all of them that I've met, are sick. Those that were healthy a few years before I left Portland appear to be completely apathetic when I met them several years later. Like the technology or the society, something impacted their mind, body, and spirit in nearly every male and female, with very few exceptions. When I went back to Portland and resided for a full year while I lived in my vehicle, that little green homemade box, that teardrop camper that I pulled with my 1985 Toyota. I was there to study what happened to society, in particular the city where I exited the womb, in a city full of new residents that did not want to hear what this long-term Portland resident with no family had to say. I saw how the women treated me. I saw how the men treated me, that were caught up in their identity being a progressive Portlander. And so, yeah, Portland is now flooding, and it's going to be flooding for a couple more days. But this is a precursor to other things that will come. like the largest human trafficking epidemic of the history of the United States. Once the real shit hits the fan and America is occupied by foreign forces, which will use the West Coast, parts of it, either BC, Seattle, and or Portland and the Columbia, as a entry point. But for now, I'm Alex Ansary for December 5th, 2015. Check out my Real Portlandia playlist and my Real Portlandia Outside the Box episode.